Well, in case I have not met you yet, my name's Gabe, and I've got baggage. I realize that there's a wide spectrum of people in the room. There's people in the room that have been around Watkinsville for quite some time. You are so familiar with the progress of these buildings and this facility and the history of this church. And on the other end of that spectrum, there are people in the room that this literally might be your very first day at Watkinsville. You haven't been here for decades. You've been here for minutes. And in fact, you're wondering what in the world is going on in this room right now. Regardless of where you are on the spectrum of your history with this place, I'm betting that you've seen this sign that hangs out in the wall of that corridor right outside these walls. If you've been here for any amount of time, whether you're male, female, young, or old, from around here or not from around here, this is the invitation of this church. That we would be people, wherever we are, that glorify God by becoming wholehearted followers of Jesus Christ. And wouldn't that be amazing if that's what our lives look like? That would mean, most likely, that we were all being mentored by somebody in the faith, that somebody was coaching us, discipling us, growing us up in the Lord. And at the same time, if this invitation were to happen in our lives, we would be surrounded by community, godly men and women that were processing what God was saying, talking out with us the words of the Lord, challenging us to go live the life that God is calling us to live. And if we were to take up this invitation, it would probably mean that we were serving actively, pursuing the next generation, growing them up in the Lord. And if all of these things took place, heaven would come to the earth through a church like this, all because this invitation wasn't just a sign on a wall. It was the calling of our lives. There's just one problem, though, if you're anything like me with this invitation, and that is that it's not just me that's carrying baggage. On some level, all of us are. Like right now, even though your bags look different than mine, and even though mine seem a little bit more visible than yours, right now we're all dealing with an issue that's wrestling actively against the call of being a part of this church. I think about the words of the great theologian Ben Rector, who once sang, and I quote, "I miss my old heroes." Anybody a Ben Rector fan out there? Some of you might be. I miss my old heroes too. I think about the number of spiritual giants that at one point in my life I looked up to in the faith. And all these years later, these moments later, these seasons later, I'm asking, where did the spiritual heroes go? I'm seeing them drop like flies, and I'm betting if you're paying attention, you're seeing it happen too. It happened again this week. It's happening in all 4 time zones across the country. It's happening with names that you know. It's happening with names that you don't know. It's happening in my extended family tree and probably yours too. I'm a part of Connect Ministries. We hang out with pastors and churches from across the country all the time. And so as I hang out with pastors, listen to the State of the Union of pastors across the country. Did you know that 80% of ministers' spouses feel like their spouse is overworked? 80% of ministers, these are people leading churches, believe that full-time ministry actually affected their marriage and family negatively. 50%, that's half of the people pastoring churches, find themselves unable to meet the needs of the job and think about the feelings that come along with that. 70% of people leading on a church staff say that they have lower self-esteem now compared to when they started in ministry. 70%, if they were honest, 7 out of 10 say that they do not have somebody that they could consider a close friend. 70%. In ministry, in 1 year, the Southern Baptist Convention paid out $64 million in stress-related claims. And look at what happens every single month. 1,500 leaders in ministry every month leave the church due to moral failure, spiritual burnout, or some type of contention in the church. 50%, that's half the people pastoring churches, are so discouraged that they would leave ministry if they could. They just don't know what else they would do to make a living and provide for their family. And then there's people like me and you, bald-headed dads, normal people, lay people, people in the marketplace. 40% of us report symptoms of anxiety and depressive. That's up over 10% in the last 5 years. If you're a high school student or parenting a high school student, or if you've ever hung out with a high school student, the stats tell us that 40% of high school students are feeling persistently sad or hopeless. That's in recent times, highest in a decade. 36% of Americans, over 60% of young adults, over 50% of mothers with young children are saying that they deal with serious loneliness. It's unbelievable, the stats that we're running into. 43% of young adults, 18 to 29, say that they're not satisfied with their lives. 45% of Americans who deal with emotional distress in some form or capacity have reported a decline in their religious participation, citing difficulty finding spiritual meaning in times of crisis. Here's the facts. You know it, and I do too. When you carry baggage, and there's a chance that many of us in the room are, like literally right now, over time, it gets heavy. And when it gets heavy, there's a real good chance that it will make you sick in your soul if you're anything like me. And now you start to see that invitation that hangs on the wall a little bit differently. The facts of the matter are, if you have not already experienced this, you will likely struggle to take up the invitation of this church and the scriptures to be wholehearted if this song was hard for you to sing and it is actually not well with your soul. So what I wanted to do over the next few minutes, I want to take you on a journey through the window of my own soul. And I'm going to walk you through decades of me trying to figure out what in the world is going on inside my own soul. And maybe as you listen to me share with you what's happened on the inside of me over the years, maybe you'll find yourselves daydreaming about your own stories along the way. Baggage number one, and boy, is this difficult to say. Baggage number one, working really, really, really hard to make sure that you don't find out about my weaknesses. I was a competitive golfer. And back in the day, at least from my standpoint, the way that you had significance in society is you did something good enough to make it in something they used to have. It was called a newspaper. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of that. But my name is G-A-B-E. And so there was nothing like waking up to try to see if I made it into the newspaper, but I was never Gabe in the newspaper. I was always Greg. I was Gene. I was Gage. One time I was Gay. One time I was Dave. I've been Jay. And there on the leaderboard, I'll never forget it, one time I was G-U-B-E, Goob Norris, for an entire week of a golf tournament. Some knucklehead penciled in an R on the end of that, and I became Goober in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina for an entire week. And over time, as ridiculous as it sounds, what I learned how to teach myself to do was to tell myself, you know what you are? You're ordinary. You're nothing. You're not memorable. You don't stand out. You're 5'11" and a half, just like every other male on planet Earth. You're not fast enough. You're not tan-skinned enough. You've got a scar on the side of your face. You're weak. That's what you are. And I don't know if you've ever experienced those types of voices in your mind, and it's almost like in those moments we make it out to seem like God is on some type of royal throne sifting through resumes saying, nope, they're not good enough. Nope, they've got a messed up past. Nope, they are bruised. Nope, they are battered. Nope, they've made mistakes. Nope, they don't have what it takes. And if that's you, I just want to tell you, welcome to the club. Because leaders all throughout biblical history have battled the same negative, weak thoughts that you have. And I'm here to declare to you today, if that is a bag that you carry, that is not what God's voice sounds like in your life, I promise. I'm telling you right now that Moses fought those battles in his mind. And he came to God and said, I am a stutterer. I can't go to Pharaoh. In fact, my brother is a way better speaker than I am. You should take him. And God said, I'm not looking for Aaron, I'm looking for Moses. And if all these negative thoughts you have about your voice, I am is going with you. I am will speak to Pharaoh. I am has the words to say. I am is capable of doing what I need to do in and through your life. And then there was Joshua. And boy, did he fight these voices. It was a bag that he carried. And there's a reason why 9,000 times in a row, God said, you be strong and you be courageous. Why do you think God had to keep reminding him of that? I'm going to go with you wherever you go. God was looking for a king. He needed somebody that would be great. And God said, I know who I'll take. I'll take an 8-year-old boy whose dad is wicked and whose granddad is even more wicked. There's weakness that marks their whole family tree. I'll take Josiah, and I'll be wise in and through a weak up-and-coming leader. God was looking to bring the Messiah of the world into the dark place that we now stand in. And he could have chosen any strong method that he wanted, but he said, I'll take a no-name girl from a no-name place. I'll take a teenager, Mary, and through her, I'll bring the hope of the world. And God said, I'm looking for people that will change the world. He chose the disciples, weak people. God said, I'm looking for somebody that will write 13 books of the New Testament. And God chose a guy that was addicted to the law, a murderer, a screw-up. I'm here to tell you today that same normal, weak person that was heading in the wrong direction, he eventually wrote, this is what God said to me. God said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. That's great news for me and you today. So that Christ, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I now delight in my weaknesses. For when I am weak, I am then strong. I declare to you today that people that are healthy in their soul, they realize that God's not looking for great people. God is great. And he's looking for people that are willing to rely on his strength, his power, and his greatness, even in the middle of their weakness. I got baggage. Baggage number 2, here it is. Ignoring how I feel. I grew up the son of a high school football coach. My Saturdays weren't spent watching cartoons. They were spent getting a Hardee's biscuit, going to the film room and watching the wishbone and figuring out how we could get the fullback out on the outside corner to eliminate the linebacker and the defensive end. My dad would tell me, sit down, shut up, eat your Hardee's biscuit and your chopped ice, sweet tea, and watch us talk about film. And that's what we did. And I learned how to be a man and be strong and be tough. And then I grew up and I married one woman, Allison, and I found out I'm incapable of producing boys. We had 3 daughters, and for a season I lived with 4 women. And I am declaring I got really good at discerning how we're feeling in the house. We have lots of feelings in our sorority house. And I started noticing this makes sense. When you start actually naming what's going on in the inside of you, it actually begins to interpret why you said what you said. That's why I thought what I thought. Oh, that's why I acted the way I acted in that particular moment. I started writing down some things that I was feeling. There was a moment when I felt unappreciated, but I never said it. But feeling unappreciated was affecting the way that I was acting, saying, thinking, and believing. I wrote down, I feel bitter right now. I feel happy right now. Just recently, I said the word serve or served around a young leader, and they told me that word doesn't mean what you think it means anymore. And in that moment, I felt old. I felt cherished. I felt picked on. I felt stupid. I felt abandoned. I felt disrespected. I felt left out. I felt like a failure, and the list goes on. And the longer you and I neglect to name what's happening on the inside of us, the more we will intentionally choose to carry baggage along the way. The writer of Proverbs, he used military language when it comes to thinking about what's going on the inside of you. And he said in Proverbs 4:23, above everything else I'm going to tell you, there is one thing that is the numero uno, he said. Guard your heart. Fight. Fight. Stand your ground by the door of your heart and your soul. And pay close attention to what's coming inside of you and what's coming outside of you. I started thinking about just the stuff that happens in the book of Proverbs alone. And just in Proverbs alone, look at all of the stuff that's happening in our heart and in our soul on any given moment of any given day. It's a big pile of spaghetti noodles tangled up in our soul if we don't get adamant about guarding our heart. People with a healthy soul, what they do is they realize that what's inside of them is eventually going to come out of them regardless of who's around them. So if you want to be wise about knowing why you're acting the way you're acting, thinking the way you're thinking, doing the way that you're doing, it will start with beginning to pay close attention to what's happening, how you feel on your heart and on your soul. I got baggage, yes I do. I got baggage, how about you? If you guard your heart, I'm here to tell you that God will take the stuff that's stony in your heart, He'll replace it with a new heart. He wants to put a new spirit in you. This is His promise. He wants to renovate your soul so that from the inside out, He could actually transform your marriage, your parenting, your life, and your leadership. Baggage. One of the bags that I've carried around over time is suppressing sadness, and I didn't even know it. One day, it was time for us to get rid of butterscotch. Butterscotch was a gift that we gave Neely Peely for Christmas one year, and the fact of the matter is, boy, did we get our money's worth. Neely Peely rode butterscotch to Timbuktu and back. He was a great horse. He occupied about 6 square feet of our house. His ear would twitch, and he would eat carrots, and you could pet his mane, and he would turn his head in the direction where he heard sound. But eventually, Butterscotch, he ran out of strength, and he got tired. And it was time for somebody else to maybe have a chance to play with Butterscotch. Allison gave me permission to take him to Goodwill. I was thrilled. You ever had something in your house you couldn't wait to get rid of? And now that 6 square feet, you just simplified your life. You're whistling as you work, driving down the road to give that to somebody else. I was about to shut the miniature van door, and it hit me. And I started crying in my dadgum driveway. And I thought to myself, this is really strange. I'm standing with Butterscotch, who's mangled up, and I'm weeping in my driveway. I'm glad nobody can see this. And I realized it really had nothing to do with Butterscotch, but in that moment, it was the first time that I admitted to myself, Neely girl has grown up. And she'll never be a kid again. I had never mourned that. And then I started realizing my childhood's gone, and I'll never be a kid again. And my parents are aging, and they need my help. And my kids are growing up, and life's changing, the seasons are changing, and I can feel it. I just had never grieved it. I'm guessing in the room right now, maybe you've got some stuff that you haven't grieved yet. I'll never forget that day I was about to shut the door, and Audrey, my youngest daughter, walked out. I'm imagining she was shocked to see me weeping with Butterscotch, and she said, "Dad, it's okay. We can get another Butterscotch." I don't want another Butterscotch. In this room, there is something that maybe you've lost. There's a season that maybe has changed. There's a loss that you've experienced, a destiny that has died, a dream that has been lost, something that has left. And maybe there's a chance that something is out there that you've not yet processed, and you've done like me and you've squashed sadness and pushed it away. If that's you, I just want to encourage you today. I just want you to be reminded today that the Lord is really close to the brokenhearted. So if you're in a dry season with Him, I just want you to know that He's not offended by your sadness. I just want you to know that He comes close. I love this line. If your heart is broken in the room today, you'll find God right there. And when you do, if you're kicked in the gut, He'll help you catch your breath. And He won't just help you catch your breath. He'll catch your tears. He'll hold your tears while you weep in front of Him. And He will use those tears as a powerful testimony of His faithfulness and His kindness and His nearness in your story. And one day somebody else will overcome by the testimony that you have of a time that you grieved well. People that are healthy in their soul, they grieve well. And so I got to ask you, what's a funeral in your story that for whatever reason you've just put off and you never went to it? And it's time for put that back on your calendar and create space in this upcoming season to grieve. Baggage is heavy. I'm sweating up here. Another piece of baggage, boy, is it hard to admit. Failing to forgive. I'll never forget, I had a counselor years ago, and this counselor started picking up on a broken record that I had become. Every time I would sit down with him, I would say, so frustrated with this person. It was a very influential person in my life that the relationship just didn't work out. So disappointed in this person. I felt like I had white knuckles, and I would come back again. I'm so let down by this person. I'm so angry with this person. I am so blank with this person. And finally, I could just see it in his eyes that particular day. He asked me, and he looked at me, and he said, Norris, are you literally going to do this the rest of your life? Isn't it about time that you cancel the debt? And I remember in that moment feeling sort of furious. No, it's not time to cancel the debt. In fact, unforgiveness is the weapon that I use to get them back for as long as I need to. I will dangle this over their head, the fact that I will not forgive them. I will dangle it over them, and in that way, somehow, in some way, I will win. And I was so furious about what the counselor was asking me to do. Reminded me of Andy Stanley's quote. If you have not read his book, It Came From Within, this is what Andy Stanley said. In the shadow of my heart, forgiveness feels like a decision to reward my enemy. Boy, do I relate to that. But in the shadow of the cross, forgiveness is merely a gift from one deserving soul to another. And then in front of my counselor in that season, I remembered that He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. And the chastisement that brought us peace with God was on His back. And by His stripes we are healed. All of us, we're like sheep. Each of us has gone astray. But God has laid upon Jesus the iniquity of us all. God made Jesus, who knew no sin, become sin on our behalf, that me and you might become the righteousness of God in Him. In the gospel, we literally hand Him our sin. He punishes our sin on the cross, and by His grace and through faith, we receive the gift of righteousness covered in His blood, fully forgiven, penalty paid. And then Paul reminds us in Colossians 3, you're not a sponge. You don't receive the gospel. You don't take forgiveness and keep it for yourself. You're a stream. The gospel is that we might receive this forgiveness and then extend it to the people where we work, where we live, and where we play. This is what the gospel looks like. People with a healthy soul, they cancel the debt. They cancel the debt and drop their boxing gloves. And no, they don't stay in the same relationship. That's for another time and another day. but they reestablish new boundaries. And they forgive the person, and in a new boundary, they're able to move on. This is the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is what it looks like to begin intimacy with Him. And that's just the problem that I have with my next baggage. My next baggage is hard to say, but I've literally spent most of my life fighting the tension of working for God without actually walking with Him. I have been in church my whole life, literally. I don't remember ever a season when I was unchurched, ever, never. So I grew up around God stuff all the time. I can quote it, I can think of it, the songs, the old songs, the new songs, I'm just familiar with it, and now I'm literally in vocational ministry. I'm almost like a professional Christian. I'm around it. I think about it. I help people think about it. And yet I've learned, and maybe you've seen it too, even if you didn't grow up in the church, and even if you're not in vocational ministry, you might know what it's like to come in a room like this and be around God stuff and yet actually not experience it. And all of a sudden what happens is you and I sort of become like zombies. Sing the song, there's a piano, they're going to have a slide, Brooke's going to come up, then we're going to go to the thing, and this is my seat, and that person took my seat, and I'm going to sit here, and I'm going to give, I'm going to contribute, and then I'm going to be able to go home, and then I'm going to do it again, and all of a sudden you realize this has just become a subculture for you, just something that you sort of do like a zombie. It is very possible to be in a humongous church like this and actually not walk with Him. I want to remind you today that all throughout the Scriptures, God is saying to me and to you, I want to be your God, and I've called you out to be my people. Jesus comes on the scene, and what Jesus says to us is, I'm the vine. You're the branches. If any man remains in me and I in him, he'll bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do absolutely jack squat. Jesus comes to these guys when He walked on the earth and He said, come follow me. Where are we going? Doesn't matter. Human locomotion without any indication of destination. What I want is you. And where we go is not the point as much as that we go there together. God's not looking for employees. God's not impressed with how high you've climbed on the spiritual ladder. God is not looking for slaves or servants. What God is interested in with you is deep friendship, intimacy. You and Him and you. People that are healthy in their soul, they find rest in the fact that God has made them like a wonderful maker, crafted them in their mother's womb, knit them together with a grin on His face because He loves them and because He made them. God looks at you and says, you are very good. I made you. I made you to do good works. You're my boy. I not only love you, but I also like you. And I'm proud of you not because of your accomplishments. I'm proud of you because of Jesus' blood that covers you, that makes you perfect before a holy God. This morning, we really wanted to break the shackles and the routine of just going through the same thing. And we wanted to just create space for you to maybe be able to identify possibly some of your own baggage. No, we're not going to have you come up here and do this, although it's hard and it is heavy. I cannot wait to get rid of this baggage. But I'm tempted to take it with me. And isn't that an interesting dynamic that we all face? Some mornings we don't even know it, but we brush our teeth, shower our bald heads. Some of us floss. Some of us don't floss. We get dressed, and then we literally pick up baggage, and we take our baggage to our marriage, and we take our baggage to the marketplace, and we take our baggage to our families. We take our baggage to our parenting. Today, I'm going to invite us to do the opposite. And I'm going to invite us to do what Jesus invites us to do. This is Jesus' invitation to us this morning. Come to me. Come to me, Jesus says. Come to me. Anybody in this room who is weary, burdened, carrying a heavy soul weight, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble. And some of the translations say he is lowly. He gets underneath our baggage to carry it for us. I'm humble in heart, and in me you will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy, and my burden is light. In your chair, you've got a card. It looks just like this. Just take one, not three, but just take one. And that pen, maybe right there where you are, instead of coming up here where I am, just sit in your seat right there, and I'm going to do the same. I'm literally going to take my bags off. And maybe where you're sitting, you could just name some that you might be facing. On one side, name your baggage. Just identify it. And on the other side, bring your baggage to Jesus and just talk to him about it. Just write out your prayer. Talk to Jesus about your baggage. Name your baggage. Talk to Jesus about your baggage. And let's take these next few moments together as we continue to worship to truly find rest for our souls.